Happy New Year, everybody! 2023 is officially saying goodbye. Bye, 2023. It was fun while it lasted, and now we move on to 2024. I hope you all had a blessed and awesome holiday season. I know I've been away for a while, but I'm back, because as soon as the holidays are over, ending with the new year, we jump back in to that spooky Halloween goodness. But before we do, New Year is one of my favorite holidays, a time of reflection and looking forward. So to celebrate that, my annual tradition continues as we take a look at the 5 best horror films of the past year and look ahead at some honorable films for 2024. Usually I do a top 5 and a top 5, but the release date schedule is kind of weird right now for 2024. So I'm just gonna list off a couple of movies I'm looking forward to, and also, while I'm at it, a few dishonorable mentions for 2023, because while this year had a lot of great movies, it had some stinkers too. Alright, I'm trying to think of where to start here. I guess I'm looking at my list. Let's start with movies that I'm looking forward to for 2024, because I'm gonna be honest, it's not many. And that's kind of disappointing. Although, to be fair, my most anticipated movie of this year, 2023, was Megan. And, my anticipation kind of let me down there. So let's start with 2 films that I really want to see for 2024. There are several movies that I'm curious about, like Night Swim or Imaginary, but I can't say I'm really excited. They look like they're going to be swings and misses, but I could be wrong. I might be proven wrong, and I hope so. In terms of movies that I think actually have potential to be great, my first movie that I want to see for 2024 is Saw 11. As you'll see in the list in a second, Saw 10 was a favorite of mine, let's just say, and a favorite of a lot of Saw fans. In fact, there are some people saying that Saw 10 was the best Saw film. I don't know if that's true, necessarily, but I think it's really high, at least in the top 3 of Saw movies. You can check out my whole review for that movie, by the way, Saw 10, and all of these other movies that I'm going to talk about on my channel individually, but I'll give you brief rundowns of my opinions of them when I get to them. As for Saw 11, though, I think there's a lot of potential. The script for Saw 10 was very, very solid. Good story idea, but I am a little scared that the concept could wear thin, just as the other 9 Saw movies eventually did. My second honorable looking forward to movie for 2024, whatever you want to call it, is going to go to Maxine. Now, I haven't talked about Pearl or X on my channel yet. I don't know why. I guess I will when Maxine eventually comes out sometime in 2024, I hope and pray. But I loved both of those movies, especially Pearl. Very creative, very stylistic, very well done. And I cannot wait to see what happens to this character of Maxine as we move into the decade of the 80s. I think that Ty West has a lot of potential as a filmmaker. He's very talented and he knows what he's doing, harkening back to that old school 70s feel. So to dip into the 80s now with this slasher territory, I think is going to be great. Very excited for Maxine. Now look here, I like to be a pretty positive person on this channel. I think of myself as such, but every now and again, you have to point out your negative opinions to enhance your positive ones. So here are the dishonorable mentions for 2023's horror movie lineup. The first is It's a Wonderful Knife, which is a movie that you may not have even heard of. I saw this movie in the theaters before Thanksgiving because I was looking forward to it. I thought it was going to be a fun, good time. No. I was going to talk about this movie on Christmas Day, and I just said, you know what? I don't even want to give it the time of day. And that's really sad to say because I respect all filmmakers. I think it takes talent to make a movie. So even though I didn't like any of these that much, there are talented people that have worked on all of them. And unfortunately, I thought the talent from this movie was going to be its creator, who was a co-writer on Freaky, one of my favorite movies of recent memory, but that talent was not presented here. This is a slasher parody of It's a Wonderful Life. It doesn't work. It insults It's a Wonderful Life. It throws in a bunch of political nonsense for no reason with no point to it. Look, there are gay characters in this movie. As you're going to see in my top 5 favorite movies of the year, there are characters that are gay in these movies that I have no problem with. It has nothing to do with the politics. It has to do with politics that are shoehorned in for no reason. And I find it really poorly written and dumb. That's all I'm going to say about It's a Wonderful Life. With a title like that, you should know what you're getting into. I thought it was going to be a funny, good time because it was the writer of Freaky. Didn't happen. Very disappointing movie, to say the least. Up next, The Exorcist Believer. I think a lot of people knew this movie was going to fail, myself included, but I gave it that benefit of the doubt. The Exorcist is my favorite movie, and The Exorcist 3 is one of the best sequels of all time. I thought, yes, this could be good. It could bring back this franchise that I love. No. It was dog feces, to be nice. It was poorly written. There were no characters. The scares were weak. It relied on just jump scares and loud banging noises. No. Sorry, Exorcist Believer. David Gordon Green and Danny McBride say what you about the Halloween series, but I actually liked what they did with it for the most part. And then they squandered The Exorcist. I don't think I'll be seeing the sequels to this. Sorry, Reagan. My next dishonorable mention is a movie I was going to give worst movie of the year to, worst horror movie, but you know what? I have one other one that I think deserves it a bit more. But this final dishonorable mention goes to Cocaine Bear. Another movie that I thought I was going to really like. Not fully even a horror movie, so it may not even belong on this list, but you know what? Cocaine Bear rubbed me the wrong way, wasn't funny, wasn't thrilling. It had one decent scene in it. It was such a letdown. You could tell it was lazily put together. No. It was going to get the worst movie of the year, worst horror movie, but I couldn't give it to that. I had to give it to one that was even more cynical, more lazy, and felt like no one cared about it. The Nun 2. Why did I see this movie? I have no idea. It was mind-bogglingly boring. I didn't really love the first Nun, to be fair. A lot of the Conjuring movies have been duds. This was honestly probably worse than The Curse of La Llorona, and I really didn't like that. It's lazy. Again, there's only so many ways to say it's bad, and I didn't like it. But it was bad, and I didn't like it. It was the worst horror movie I saw this year, amid several movies that I really could have gone without. But now let's get into some average mentions. I don't know what you want to call that. You know what? Let's not even call this section average mentions or average normal you know what? We're going to call it most disappointing, because there were 2 movies this year that I was really excited about and they really let me down. The first is Megan, which was my most anticipated movie of the year, which I talked about in the last New Year's Eve special. This movie just felt like it was written by an AI. For a movie about an AI, it felt written by an AI. It lacked a deep heart to it, and it was very predictable, and there's only so many ways to say you didn't enjoy a project. What I really think messed it up for me, though, is this is a killer robot movie. Robots are creepy because they have no emotion, and they're procedural, they're binary. But in this movie, Megan's like cracking one-liners and doing TikTok dances and acting like Freddy Krueger. Just didn't work for me. It wasn't a terrible movie, but it was disappointing. It's a mid movie at best. And that's upsetting, especially when the reviews are really positive for some suspicious reason. But in terms of the most disappointing movie this year, I'm gonna have to give that to Skinnamarink, which maybe should go on the dishonorable mentions list. But you know what? I respected it for doing something completely off the wall and different. I just kind of think it fell hard on its face. it was a movie that everyone on TikTok was saying it's the scariest movie of all time, oh my gosh, and I kept hearing how original and unique it was, and I'm like, you know what? This could be another Blair Witch Project, really. And I love the Blair Witch Project. I love these unique ways of telling a story. Skinnamarink was an hour and a half of looking at the ceiling and carpet. And I guess if you filled in the blanks a lot, there could be something scary there, and there were a couple of sequences that were rather frightening. That's what's keeping it from the low poo-poo caca section. It just really let me down. I don't think I would ever fully watch it again. I would watch a highlight reel, which is like 5 minutes at best. It was just a whole lot of nothing. It probably made its money, so there's going to be more movies like it. And it's unfortunate because there are great analog horror films on YouTube that you could watch, probably from this director included, that are more worthwhile than watching this entire movie. If you want to watch it, you can actually find it on Shudder, but if you don't want to watch it, I don't blame you, and you're probably better just watching the highlight reel on YouTube. Alright, now it's time for some honorable mentions. We talked about dishonorable, disappointing movies. Let's talk about some movies that I actually enjoyed, but just maybe weren't the best of the year. Up first is going to be Evil Dead Rise. A movie that I thought was well done, had some good gore and scare sequences, the set design was nice, and it was overall pretty fun, but it was lacking a solid main character and characters. Yeah, there was that aunt who kind of became the protagonist at the end, but when you have a character like Ash in this series, you gotta do a little better than that. The characters were a little weak, but it made up for it in terms of fun. If they do another Evil Dead, I hope they'll expand the lore a bit more of these individuals and their, you know, kind of way they fit into this series. Up next is going to be another movie that I quite enjoyed, but I think it had a disappointing ending. Scream 6. I actually quite liked it. I didn't love it as much as Scream 5. I liked the setting of New York City, and I thought it was good to see kind of the core 4 characters get developed a bit more in their relationships and such. Having it set on Halloween tugged at my heartstrings personally. But I think where it fell apart a bit for not just me, but for a lot of Scream fans, was the last act, and specifically the reveals of the killers. It wasn't that it was a terrible motivation or anything, it just, I don't know, it felt a little weak and underdeveloped. But it wasn't terrible. Wasn't terrible. Scream 6 was actually pretty good. I could see Scream 6 and any of these other two I'm about to mention squeak their way into the top 5 in the future. I could redact some of my comments from this video in the future. But up next, my next honorable mention, another good one that I liked. Shockingly enough, because admittedly, the trailers didn't make it look good, and it doesn't look all the best. I do not like the lighting in this movie, but Renfield was a fun time. Was it the best movie? No. But it had a lot of fun with its premise. Nicolas Cage as Dracula was awesome, and it had some good slapstick gore. I enjoyed it, and it was a fun time. And then finally, a movie I haven't heard anybody talk about, but was one of my favorites of the year, but maybe just barely made it out of the top 5, and not really a horror movie per se. Missing. That movie shot in that unfriended kind of found footage style about a girl trying to find her missing mom. It's a sequel to that other one that I'm blanking on the name, but it's the guy trying to find his daughter. It's kind of the inverse of that. But both of them were great movies. The performances are really solid, especially from this main girl in Missing. And I think you can find it on Netflix, I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong about that, but it was a well-done movie and a good mystery, a good script for a mystery movie. But there we go. Honorable mentions, dishonorable mentions, blah, 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 all that. Let's get into the top 5 horror movies of 2023. At number 5, we have Infinity Pool. Now, admittedly, when I saw this movie, I thought it was really good, but really weird. This one is definitely one that deserves a rewatch for me. It's made by Brandon Cronenberg, the son of David Cronenberg, aka the guy that made The Fly and Scanners and other classic horror films. Brandon recently did the movie Possessor, which wasn't in my top 5 of the year it came out, but I did enjoy it. I just thought it was a little dull, and it didn't have a lot of life in it, so to speak. But I thought he improved on that. I thought this was the better of his 2 movies so far, or however many he's made, at least in terms of horror movies on my radar. Infinity Pool is about characters that get into an accident in a foreign country, and technically they're supposed to get the death penalty, but they can actually get a clone to get the death penalty in their place. Fascinating idea. It has some social ramifications in it. I thought it was very well shot, well acted. Again, there were some sequences where it dragged a bit in terms of pacing, but overall it was creative enough to make me put it in the top 5. Good job, Brandon Cronenberg. Check out Infinity Pool, but be warned, it's a bit psychedelic. At number 4, we have a sleeper hit that I think surprised a lot of people. Talk to Me. Made by the YouTube channel creators of Raka Raka. Funny enough, this is an Australian horror film that follows characters who encountered this crusty statue of a hand, apparently the hand of a psychic, that when you grasp it, you can actually see the spirits of the dead. Now, admittedly, the poster and the title and the concept, while they sounded intriguing, looked a bit rinse and repeat when I was hearing about this movie through the grapevine. But I'm glad I saw it, and I'm glad people recommended it through word of mouth, because it's really well done, very scary, and has a lot of frightening sequences. I do think, for having this main character be the sole main character the entire time, I wish we knew a bit more about her. I feel like I didn't quite know her by the end. But everything that we experienced in the movie with her was really crazy, very intense, and probably the scariest movie of the year. But scariest to me doesn't mean best horror movie, although I do think this was definitely one of the most technically competent, maybe even more so over the next film that I'm going to mention, which is number 3, Thanksgiving. And admittedly, yeah, the Eli Roth film maybe didn't have as tight of a script as, say, Talk to Me. But what it did have is a nice, fun, holiday slasher film with a good vibe, solid enough characters for the premise, and rewatchability. I do think that movies like Talk to Me or Hereditary, while I love them because they're so intense, it's harder to warm up to watching them again. Whereas Thanksgiving, it's lower stakes, it's a slasher movie, it's kind of stupid in parts. You know, a woman turns into a big turkey. But it's fun and rewatchable, and I will definitely be checking out this movie next Thanksgiving because I don't have to watch Thanksgiving again. Even though, admittedly, I guess Thanksgiving's kind of fun too, in its own right. I haven't seen a lot of Eli Roth movies. I'd be curious to check out more of his now, although I heard this is one of his best, so that's a little disappointing. Especially, like I said in my original review of this movie, he's like considered a master of horror. Where do you get that name from? I'm not sure. At any rate, Thanksgiving was a fine enough movie. Talk to Me may have been a better script overall and more personal, but Thanksgiving, I keep wanting to say killing, it was just a fun time. At number 2, we have a sleeper hit, I suppose, one that a lot of people thought was gonna flop, but it didn't. Saw X. Saw 10. Took 10 Saw movies to get back to the heart of it. A lot of people are saying this is the best Saw movie, and I still think I like 1 and 2 a bit more, but this is easily in the top 3, which is crazy. It's been all these years, and Saw 10 brings it back. I'm nervous about Saw 11 because Saw 10 was just so tight and well-knit, but you know what? It was a good time, and I think there is potential for this series to continue. What I really think it did well, though, is give you sympathy and insight into the character of John Kramer and allow Tobin Bell to act. He's good at it. He's a good actor, a good talent. There was actually a movie that came out this year called The Cello, which was directed by Darren Lynn Bousman of Saw fame, starring Tobin Bell. And my point to that tangent is that Tobin Bell's just a great actor. And when he's in the movie a lot, the movie's good. Need I say more? No. finally, number 1, my favorite horror movie of the year is gonna get me in hot water. Whatever, I don't even care. Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin was just an awesome movie, okay? It was like an elongated Twilight Zone episode, if you will. And apparently I need to read the book because the story's really solid. It's about basically the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or the so-called 4 horsemen, coming to this cabin in the woods where there's a gay couple and their adopted daughter and say, guess what? You gotta kill one of your family members or the world ends. It's a crazy premise, but they really hold true to it. It takes itself pretty seriously, considering that it's kind of an absurd concept, and I really liked it. You know, it had a lot of heart. It had great characters. Say what you will about M. Night and his weird dialogue, yes, I know, but the man has talent. I respect his direction, and I like the scripts that he comes up with and the stories he picks. Old was my favorite movie of the year. It came out, and I know that's a horrible opinion, but I don't care. I still hold by it, and I will attest to Knock at the Cabin, which is conveniently right up here, as my favorite, not only horror movie, but film of 2023. Well, there you have it, everybody. My New Year's Eve picks for horror. Have a happy new year, and I'll see you when 2024 gets here. Remember, for all things Halloween, this is hauntformer.
Happy New Year, everybody.